Let's talk about that CPI number. We just got May's numbers. They were reported with inflation coming in at 4%. This is instead of the expected 4.1%, the lowest level since March 2021. Lawrence, what is your reaction?
Yeah, you might see slightly different numbers on the core inflation, but nonetheless, which the Fed might be looking at. But nonetheless, what the market is saying is, okay, well, it's as expected. Rates are probably going to not go up. If you look at like the percentage probability of rates going up tomorrow, which is when the Fed will announce whether or not it raises Fed funds rates, like 95% say, no, it's going to stay the same. But the market does expect at least one more rate hike in this year. At most, that's what the market expects. It might get a little bit more, but who are we to say? And so that kind of creates a whole view of what risk should be. So it makes it a little bit easier to take on some of the risk, but it's sort of like, okay, now what? And I think that's going to be the big question for the rest of the year, at least when it comes to, crypto is like, okay, can we take on these risks? And when I say risk, I mean trades, et cetera, and trading in the crypto markets. So that's kind of what this inflation number at least says. Okay, we're on track to where we expect things to be. We might see just kind of getting boring.
The road to boring.
I'm okay with boring.
I'm also okay with boring. Emily, any takeaways from this morning, CPI?
I mean, I'm glad you guys are both okay with boring, because that is very much where we are. So we're all okay with it. I mean, as we've discussed before on this show, exciting in crypto often means bad. So, boring is not necessarily a bad thing. But look, I mean, I think the CPI thing, as usual, this is just like a price. This is just looking for a narrative here. I don't really think there is a narrative. There's not even a consensus on what inflation means for Bitcoin. Bitcoin has not responded the way it's supposed to inflation as a hedge. So I don't really think there's a clear narrative that we can draw from this. As Lawrence just said, the more important thing is interest rates. And that's what people are going to be looking for.
Lawrence, I have one more question for you. I'm no markets expert, and it seems like the CPI continuously comes in as expected or lower. I believe this is like the 11th month in a row that it's coming in lower and lower and lower. But when we look at the price of groceries or the price of gas, it still feels expensive to the everyday user. How help me make sense of that?
Yeah, different components in the CPI. It's not just about food, It's like cars. There's all sorts of stuff that you might put money in. I know Teslas are cheaper. You get Teslas for a lot less than you could last year. So that's such a key component of the CPI. But the point is that different things move in different rates, and the core CPI I think went up a little bit higher than expected. So again, that's the sort of thing. Rent is an issue too, but we're also seeing some kind of the housing market's kind of cooling off. Is kind of what we're seeing a little bit. I don't want to say it's totally cooling off. I could tell you for a fact it's kind of a weird housing market right now, where you have a lot less inventory and you have higher interest rates, and that's spooking people from selling into this market because they have no place to go. So you're seeing this kind of like all sorts of weird things happening in the housing market. Housing is a huge part of people's expenses. So that remains to be seen what's going to happen there. But that's like that's because as rates go up, people feel trapped in their homes, if you will, because it's like, okay, I sell my house with a 3.25% interest rate, and where am I going to go? And then pay 7 and change % interest rate on top of it, and there's like nothing to buy. So it creates this kind of, and so that eventually ends up in the CPI data. It ends up in inflation data as well. You are going to see all sorts of weird things happen.